Good morning, everyone. Cutting it kind of tight here. My doors on my vehicle were frozen shut. So this is a committee of the whole, and that means when we get to questions or discussions, you can raise your hand and be recognized and join in. We've got quite a stacked agenda today, a lot of things to get done, and we have a committee in camera at 10:30 if we can make it. So we're going to try and keep it tight. So if you can be succinct, that would be great. I like that word.
And Your Worship, we have the autonomy to kind of put that later, so it doesn't have to be quite on time. As long
We can move it if we need to.
Yes, as long as we have the date prior, so the time prior.
Okay. Call this committee of the whole to order. And can I have a motion to adopt the agenda for February the 11th? Councillor Corlick, second. Councillor Studley. Got my name straight this morning. All those in favor? Minutes of the January 14th Committee of the Whole, motion to accept. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Zielinski, all those in favor? And immediately down to the petitions and delegations. Our first group up is the Grand Forks Fall Fair. Dana, you're on. Good morning.
Do I need the mic this morning?
Yeah, the mic thing has kind of limited our ability to debate as a group, and I think we've been neglecting it because it gives us the spontaneity that we're looking for in discussions. But with the crowd today, it probably would be a good idea if you used.
It doesn't seem to be working up.
You need to. Power. There you go.
Good morning, Mayor Taylor and members of council. My name is Dana O'Donnell, and I'm the president of the Grand Forks and District Fall Fair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm here to inform the city of our plans this year and ask for the city to help us with continued support. Last year was a fantastic year for the Fall Fair. The exhibition hall was back in the curling arena, and it was the most beautiful it has ever been. The Quilt Challenge showcased many amazing talents of local quilters. More animals visited the Fall Fair than we've seen in many years, to the delight of fairgoers. Our children's area was described as the best in this part of the province. The entertainment stage provided a great venue to share the valley's talents, and the Demolition Derby was back for a second time. September 7th and 8th, we will be holding the Grand Forks and District Fall Fair, which started 109 years ago. Last year, the people of the Boundary were greatly affected by the flood. It made it a challenging year for the fair to seek out local business support, and we feel that many families that would have wanted to participate were not able to due to financial constraints. This year, as the community recovers, we hope to see growth in the fair and look forward to celebrating all the positives we have around us. This year's group of volunteers is amazing, and we have been spending countless hours planning. In 2018, we had amazing 24-hour support from Rod Foffenoff, and the staff at the City Works Yard were wonderful to work with. We are requesting that the city continues helping the Fall Fair with allowing us to use the sound trailer, bleachers, picnic tables, and the usual items that we request in our events request form. The Demolition Derby has proven to be a successful part of the fair. We are very grateful for the privilege of using the city-owned lot beside Bartlett Park. The amount of volunteer time to set up the area by digging berms and returning the property to its natural state is extremely challenging. We request that the Council for the City of Grand Forks adopt a resolution stating they will allow the Fall Fair to place a berm and cement barriers on the property and allow it to remain until such time as the city decides to sell the property. This would save the fair a huge amount of volunteer time needed and would be a great relief. The Grand Forks Fall Fair would also like to request that the City of Grand Forks consider purchasing tall metal fencing panels. The fair plans to rent over 200 this year, and it is a huge expense and effort to have them shipped from out of town. If the City of Grand Forks acquired a couple stacks of panels, then many groups and events would have access to them. They could also be used in times of emergency where areas and buildings may need to be secured. The Grand Forks Fall Fair also requests that the city support us with finding a permanent location, a location where the fair would be able to set up a proper fairgrounds with an arena, grandstands, permanent exhibition hall, and animal housing area. The fair had these at the location of Fireman's Park before the city decided to use the land for industrial purposes. The fair has been patiently waiting for too many years. With this new council, it is time for a new location, and now is the time to move forward on old promises. With the support of the mayor and council, we look forward to continuing to grow into the future. And thank you for your time this morning, and we all look forward to seeing you at the Grand Forks and District Fall Fair this year.
Thank you. Questions, council? Councillor Thompson. I love these things.
Oh, thanks. Dan, I just wanted to clarify, and we did talk out in the hallway, that you're not, in your submission for delegation, you're making reference to James Donaldson Park.
Yes.
But I think you actually are meaning Dick Bartlett Park.
That's correct. In my speech, I corrected it to Bartlett Park.
Further questions? Councillor.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much for your submission. I just wanted, in your submission, you did not talk about curbs. Are you talking about curbing, like for the demolition derby? What would those structures look like?
The structures that are being considered are the cement barriers that were used by MCON along the sides of the highway.
Okay. Okay, now I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay, and they would be they'd be semi-permanent in the sense that they would be lifted into place with equipment and left there, right?
Correct.
How long would that be? Would that be like go around the whole demolition pit? Like, is that going to be like 100 meters on each side, or 50 meters on each? How big a structure are we talking about?
At this time, we don't have an exact number.
Okay.
I believe that it would just be a ring around the area.
Okay. Okay, so it'd be a circular ring.
Yes.
Okay. And is that the berm you referred to as well?
We haven't secured the cement barriers yet. In the previous years, we've had to bring in heavy equipment and actually dig a ditch with a berm.
Okay.
If we move forward with permission and we do secure the cement barriers, then we would just be using the barriers and not berming.
Okay.
Dana, could you describe the panels again that you're looking for?
The panels that we rent are quite tall. They're the metal panels that fit together to make solid fencing.
Right. Yeah, I've seen some of them at the site, so it's more of those you're looking for. That
Correct.
You don't have to rent.
Yes. Our cost this year is going to be approximately $7,500 just to rent the panels. To buy them would be $15,000. In 2 years of renting, they would be paid for.
Seems like a good deal for the renter. Sure.
We rent them for Party in the Street and other events as well, and they're very costly to rent, but not as costly to buy.
And your argument is that the city can use them in a variety of places, such as the street events?
Correct.
Right.
Any type of events where you need to block off areas, and in emergencies, if there's buildings that have had a fire, things like that.
Right. Councillor Corlick?
How many in attendance last year at the Fall Fair?
2,000 at the gate, but there is also many people that were in the demolition derby, in the pit areas, and all the volunteers. So we're looking more like 2,200. This year our goal is going to be 3,000.
Well, congratulations. I hear that it was very successful last year.
Thank you.
Yes, it was. Further questions, comments? Hearing none, let's take a look at what we're being asked to do here. We're passing this on to staff to take a look at, and I think there are some budget implications for the purchase of panels. But I think the most immediate would it be acceptable for us to leave structures in place on the site, or would that cause a problem for our staff? And we'll look at that. So, yes.
Your Worship, I think that if we know that it's kind of a temporary, permanent basis, I think it could be contingent on if all of a sudden we had to use that property for other purposes, if we were going to all of a sudden look at to sell, or if we had an emergency situation, that we had a contingency to be able to utilize that in that type of situation.
Right, so we'll be taking a closer look at that and the implications of leaving some or all of those structures in place. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I think I would like to make a motion that this issue be referred to our management team for consideration and a report back on the practicality of the request contained in this presentation.
And the seconder for that motion, Councillor Corlick. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Carried. So we'll get back to you on that, Dana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
It was a great job last year on the fall fair. Next item of business is a petition from a group of people concerned about the housing on 2nd Street. And in this case, this petition has been forwarded properly and on time, and I welcome them to make comment.
Greetings, Mr. Mayor and councillors of this fine city. We are here today.
Can you identify yourself just for the record?
I'm Russ Ward.
I'm Pamela Kennedy.
And we are representing the people who signed the petition against the proposed housing project on 2nd Street. The people do not feel that this is the most well thought out program that has been instituted. We disagree with some of the, I would like to say, the way it's been presented and what it could be as to what it should be. We are not against housing our homeless. We are not against dealing with the addicts in our community. We just feel that the location and the type of facility as has been presented, which has changed over time, is not fitting with what the community needs or wants at this time. This project is being mired in vagueness, and the goalposts of this project have changed from moment to moment, depending on who is asking and who is presenting. It is hard to get a good read on what we're actually getting. When we look at the project on 19th Street, I can pull up from the city site right down to the building plans of something that has been initiated by the city, by the flood committee, and by BC Housing. It's a beautiful project. But when we try to get details on a 2nd Street housing project, which changes from a wet facility to a VAT certified facility, to housing our homeless, to housing our homeless with our seniors and mentally challenged, there's many concerns that have not been addressed, and the people of this town feel that we need to take a stand against some of the ways this has been proposed, because they raise very real concerns. If it isn't a wet facility, it does not help our homeless. As we've seen at the Housing Warming Center, we have people with definite needs and addiction problems, and we can house them for a little bit, but to mix them with seniors and the mentally challenged would raise various concerns, as we've seen in Langley, we've seen in Toronto, and we've seen in Halifax, just to name a few that have come up recently, where seniors are living in fear of the very people that this kind of facility has meant to help. BCH, on every other project, has been open to community involvement. It states that it is involved the community in going forth with every project they do. In 19th Street, we can see what a very good cooperation between the city, the people that represent here, and the flood committee, and everything when we have disclosure, what we can do. When it comes to the facility that's being proposed, we have a facility that changes. We have a facility that was meant for a larger community than what Grand Forks represents, to help a larger portion than what Grand Forks has, with a support structure that Grand Forks does not have at this point. So everything is great when you look at it in terms of a place like Langley, or Kamloops, or Penticton, or Kelowna. But we have 4,000 people, and we're already struggling with our support infrastructure to help the people we already have. This does not take into account that we haven't been able to help with our supports as needed, and does not address the fact that if we do this, we don't have the supports on hand to help the very people we want to help. So at best, it is a Band-Aid solution and a shuffling, and it does not help the people that we are trying to address. There's the concern of the composition, which I've already addressed, because we have no definite thing of what the composition of the building is going to be. There's also the question of whom is going to be running this project, the length of their terms, and what say the community will have in the committee that are the nonprofit organization that will run this. Who will it be accountable for? People want to know details about this so as to address concerns and see the moving parts that are going to be involved in the day-to-day running of a facility such as this. As we say, this project has a maximum impact for this valley. It can do great good, or it could do great harm. And it's up to us to make sure that if we do have a facility like this, that we have all the supports in place to make this a successful facility. We should also look into expanding job training component to this project, which has not been addressed. It may have been addressed, but BC Housing has not given us the nuts and bolts of many of the things that are regarding this project. And many in this community also feel a project such as this shouldn't be at the gateway to the city, no matter how aesthetically pleasing we may make the building look. I know the city looked into the idea of a land swap, and that BC Housing turned that down for a variety of reasons, many of which apply to larger centers than here. People with special needs will require access to the hospital, which is 5 minutes driving away and up a few hills if you are to walk. They will need to go to Community Futures, still a sizable walk away, and they will need to access other supports that our community lacks at the moment, and that will require going to trail at the very least. So even in town, they will need transportation to services. They will need access to services out of town, and I don't see anything addressing that issue, which is unwise. Once you put transportation availability into the equation, it really changes the mobility part of the equation in regards to the location. If you have transportation to move our people from place to place, it doesn't necessarily have to be on 2nd Street. Because you have to move people anyways, we don't have to use this exact location, which is the gateway to our city. We have the opportunity as a community to come together to make this the best possible outcome, but not as it's being currently shown. At every step, BC Housing has said that it is working with the community for the community. It is time, as a community, to force our way to the table and be allowed to voice our input, to get this project tailor-made to fit our community, not get a box project made to fit in centers with a population of 50,000 plus, with the various supports that they have already on hand. It is our duty to inform people and BC Housing of the problems they face so that they can be addressed and taken into consideration. We need to shore up the supports in our community. We ideally need a small rehab and detox for the center, and we need to be honest and upfront with our community so that they can feel confident in this project, not concerned and suspicious. I'm sorry, I'm a little wordy at times. but I think I have the gist of most of what I want to say and most of the concerns of the people that signed the petition. Most of the people here do not want a wet facility. We look at prior instances of where we've had unregulated use of facilities. When we look at the facility that was down by the river, when we don't regulate it, there's the mess that the city has to clean up. And we look at the warming center that was thrust in with no talk, all of a sudden it was there. We had notice of 3 days. And you see that the mess and the needles are starting to accumulate there as well. These people have special needs, and they're going to need a special form of support in order so they do not have to face the city-wide backlash that we had over other projects in town. I don't think we're doing fair by them. We're definitely not doing fair by the people. And we need to really sit down and think how we can do best to address everybody's concerns so that this can be a success. And that's it.
Thank you, Russ. Can I begin by addressing some of your comments, and then we'll open it up. The vagueness, yes. We actually, council saw the 19th Street proposal, I think on Thursday when it was sent out. Friday or Thursday? Thursday. So we had no prior knowledge whatsoever of the details of that. We had way more information about 2nd Street than we had about 19th Street. Wet versus abstinence. No one in the professional field believes that abstinence is a model that would be supported any longer by professionals or government. We are not in an abstinence environment anywhere. Tell me where there's abstinence. It's usually a very specified program run by religious groups in particular. So abstinence is not a model that BC Housing will accept at all. As far as the provider, they call them, that's the person locally that would be responsible, we are supporting, and we made that clear last week to the minister directly, that as a council we support a local provider so that there can be that interaction that will give us an opportunity to have local input at a local level with a board of directors that live here. Job training, detox, there's 2 motions that are being crafted by this council going forward. One is Councillor Thompson's crafted motion that's going to AKBLG and hopefully on to UBCM, and the other is Councillor Moslin's. And Councillor Thompson's referring to the detox dilemma, that between detox and treatment there's a 3-month or more waiting period. We're asking clearly that there be some recognition of the need for detox at a regional level. Councillor Moslin is looking directly, and we're treading on ice here because clearly BC Housing has a mandate to put these in, and clearly they do not consult. Not in the traditional sense that you have in your mind about consultation. They consult when it's already there. How do you feel about it now? Kind of thing.
And I think a lot of people are against that kind of.
Yes, they are, and I think Councillor Moslin has clearly indicated what it leaves is a community that's angry, feeling not listened to. They leave us with a community that's upset about the way they've handled it. And I think there's a better way of doing it. So does Councillor Moslin. On that, I'll open it up for comment. And Councillor Thompson, kick it off.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think there's anybody sitting at this table that is excited about the 2nd Street location. And we've made that abundantly clear to BC Housing. We did propose a land swap, they're not interested. It is my understanding from discussions with our staff that BC Housing, they claim to be working with the city. They don't have to. They are a crown corporation of the province. And whether we like it or not, they can come in and they can build a project. And that is my understanding of what their intent is to do, is to build it there. I don't think that there's anything that we can do really to I think Councillor Krog would disagree with me on that, but to get this project moved elsewhere. And so, do we try to make the best of a bad situation? Do we? They've claimed that they're going to be coming and doing small consultation of about 50 people. The opportunities for community input is absolutely necessary. This is just. I was on. It wasn't this council that was saddled with that, but it was the previous council, and we heard about it the day before the letters were hand delivered to our business community downtown. So I can tell you we were not happy about that. We lobbied strong and hard at the UDCM with every minister that we could talk to, including BC Housing. And so we have your best interests at heart. We really and truly do. And we're going to be trying to do everything that we can to get the information out there and for public consultation so that BC Housing can hear directly from you, not just from council.
And in recognition of the previous council's efforts here, they did move it from 51 or 52 studios down to 34 single bedrooms with the argument that this is long-term housing. If it's going to be long-term for people, let's make it more comfortable with a larger kitchen and a bigger footprint in the apartments than a studio. And Councillor Krog is next, then Councillor Corlick.
Well, thank you, guys. Excellent presentation. Okay. One thing I didn't hear in your presentation, which is a big concern of mine, and that's the support for these facilities. BC Housing has said, what was it, $1 million a year or something?
It's about $1 million and
Yeah, $1 million a year
operating costs
to support this facility. But the big question is, how long is that going to last? Most of the other facilities are on 3-year contracts, so they get it for 3 years and then it has to be renewed. So changing governments, what's going to happen if at the end of 3 years there is no support? Does it then come on to the back of the taxpayers? BC Housing has said stuff like 35-year commitment and that type of thing. But that's amortization for a mortgage, let's say, 25 years. But so I'm not sure how somebody can commit to 35 years at $1 million a year when they will probably be dead or not in power or in jail. Some of them will be in jail. That whole legislative thing. So yeah, that scares the crap out of me, honestly. And the other thing is the lack of services, that everything which you guys did mention from the RCMP. Interior Health has talked to us and they're like, yeah, sure. They're not bringing anything to the table, right? So we could end up in a totally horrible situation, or if BC Housing would listen to us, we could craft it so it's something that the community would accept. When we first had a meeting with BC Housing, I joked about the fact that they hadn't heard about our 3-year water and sewer project, which would mean ripping up that whole intersection for 3 years so that no vehicles could access that lot. So that was a joke, sort of, kinda, right? I think it's a mistake. It's not for our community, and I don't support it.
Okay, and we have someone in the far back. Oh, just a moment. I'm sorry, Kathy, Councillor Corlick, and then
Thank
we'll
you.
go back to you, sir.
And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And I understand that it's the lack of communication and knowledge that is causing all of us a great deal of concern. Because at one point it's this, one point it's that, and then nobody knows anything. You know, and it's the fear of having, there's an open soup kitchen and all these things that is not necessarily true. But nobody knows all this stuff, and then we don't either. I mean, they give us little tidbits and say, don't worry, everything's gonna be good. But that's not enough, and I support a lot of the concerns that Neil Councillor Cog just mentioned.
If I may, when I talk about the facility, and I've watched this from when it was implemented, the day it was dropped on us like a bomb, to the moving goalposts. We've had a wet facility, and the last I heard from somebody who says they know is that it would be a VAT certified facility, where the people coming into it are addicts who have gone through rehab and detox, will be drug tested and secured in the facility, which makes it a little bit more acceptable for the community to accept the facility that way, because you'd be able to put seniors and people with recovering addicts. But like Mr. Taylor said, they're not going to accept anything where you can't put in anybody off the street. So which one is it? Because these are two totally different things. If you're going to have recovering addicts in the building, you definitely do not want to put them in with people who are still struggling with their addictions, making it easier for these ones to fall off the wagon. You don't want to put seniors in with raging addicts who have their own particular issues, most of which are mental. I'm sorry, it's not probably politically correct to say that, but it's still a shovel's a shovel, no matter what you want to call it. There's a lot of deep concerns, and BC Housing, when it comes to this, is not giving anybody a direct answer. And it is unsettling, and it is frustrating, and we cannot move with confidence forward, even having the supports necessary from policing to ambulancing to mental services. How many supports are they going to need that we don't have? Because we can't even deal with the 10 to 15 people in our own community who cannot get out for rehab because there is no way to get them there. There's so many moving parts in this. If people want it to be successful, they need our input, because when it looks at it from the outside, they are totally planning a facility for a place that isn't Grand Forks.
Thank you, Russ. I have a gentleman in the back.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Barry Jarvis. Just comment, an excellent presentation, and thank you. I wasn't involved in it, but it's a great deal. Two comments. One, I hate being bullied. I don't care who it is, I just hate being bullied. And I think BC Housing are doing a hell of a job of that. Second of all, I think when you come to vote on this variance that they're asking for, the 7 of you, the real question, the litmus test is, would I want this facility in my block where I live? Would you? Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. In terms of community input, it was clear that BC Housing wants a community committee, a strong representative committee of all the services and interests within the community. We had that committee, we brought it together a couple of times on the other issue of immediate housing. That's the kind of committee that they're expecting would be an accountability committee in the community. The other thing is that the seniors issue, we have a lot of seniors that are addicted, so that is one of the big addiction areas is seniors. So to picture them all as maybe having dementia or some other minor problems, a lot of them are just poor, but there are also a high level of addictions. We have the highest level of fentanyl deaths per capita than many other small communities in BC. I don't know whether we're leading the pack or not, but it's not a good sign that we do have a serious drug problem in this community. So I totally agree that focus of rehab and addiction has to be clarified. People do not understand how we can serve those people at this point. They're not being looked at in terms of how that's going to progress. It's more stigmatizing and basically looking at that whole group as a typical type of junkie group, which it's not. And way in the far back, Kate.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Kate Sailors for the Gazette. It's kind of been danced around, but just straight up, what can the city do? So now that we've heard this presentation, does the city actually have any power to stop this? It was a private land sale, it's a private development. What can the city actually do, assuming that they've heard the concerns expressed here today?
Can I throw this back to staff for an answer on that from a technical point of view?
Our manager of development and engineering, I think, has the best answer to this.
All right.
The power on this side.
This is the planning department's leader.
It's a development. If it was anybody but BC Housing, not much really. I mean, if it fits the zoning and if they meet all the requirements in the bylaws. If it was a private developer and you tried to stop it, you'd probably end up in court. So it's like Councillor Thompson pointed out, we are the children of the province, and the province does not have to consult with us. They actually can pretty much do anything they choose to do. They choose to work with us, and that's what they've been doing.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
I have one more concern, and it's about location. When we flooded in the spring, the location was 3 feet underwater? Ish?
Okay, let's answer that right away. Can we have a comment here from David?
Oh, I can start.
On the floodability of that, or go ahead, Dean.
All of the buildings that were built to the 200-year floodplain were fine. So Clyde's, the optometrist office, anything that was built to the 200-year floodplain was fine. And this will have to meet all those. It has to have engineered footings, and it will have to be built to withstand probably standing water as well as moving water.
So clarifying that it's not going to flood unless we have something worse than the catastrophic flood that we had last year. Councillor Thompson, and then
just a quick comment on the entry into that facility. It's going to be that, as I think we've all been given to understand, which means it's people that want to go in there that are suffering with addictions have to complete an application to get in, and they have to want to improve themselves. And they will be allowed to use while they're in there, and they will receive, again, as I'm given to understand, counseling and other services. If they break their agreement, then they're out. And the other thing is and I just recently found this out, is that I thought detox and rehabilitation was one and the same, and they're not. And so that's one of the reasons, the big reason that I'm bringing forward the resolution that I have today. But I hope that clarifies a little bit on the tenancy in that facility.
Well, I can see that some people would be still concerned about putting at-risk groups together. That doesn't address that, but it does address it from BC Housing standpoint and provide clarity. It gives people something to go up against instead of vagueness.
Yeah.
What we really want is clarity, we want transparency, and we want accountability. Because in all things government, and we've seen what happens when we don't have it, and you can just look at the news from night to night, what we don't have is representation of the people. We have a minority that is affecting a majority, and it goes against the wishes of the majority. And it's very hard to sell to the common people that this is totally within our best interests when none of our concerns have been addressed as this has been proposed. At best, it is kind of silly. We shouldn't have to have this conversation if everybody had done the job they were supposed to do from the BC Housing standpoint, because our issues are the same issues every time they put one of these facilities into place. And they just go through and try to find another place to put it in where they can bully us and get their way. I don't think, I agree, and I want council to know that the town is behind you as you work to get them to be accountable and to work with us.
I totally agree. I think in total the town is supportive of this. They want us to make it work. That's what they're expecting. That's what I'm seeing from so many townspeople. I mean, there are people that are alarmed and frightened at what they can't understand. But I think from the general point of view, we have some power to make this run properly, and we need to use that influence that we have. And I have Councillor Corlick, Councillor Krog, oh no, just a minute here, but less, Councillor Johnson.
Before we get to...
Welcome on board.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm just passing on a question from one of the people watching on Facebook. And sorry if it's a bit late, but I'm have to monitor two things here. You said seniors who are addicted, and they were curious how many people are in that community of addicted seniors in our town.
You know, my understanding is that often the addictions of seniors are to prescription medications, and that seems to be the biggest problem area for a lot of seniors. Although, if you look at the kind of drug use statistics, 40 to 60-year-olds are right in that target group, so they're not immune from the problem. And I have some up front here first. Councillor Cross, keeping it tight.
Yeah,
okay. Just to say that a lot of the people that are facing and do have mental health issues or addictions, we don't see those, a lot of people, because they're at home. They're not coming out to, and they probably will not go to a facility such as that. It will be people that, and the only people that can go in are low income. And so it's a whole different area of being addressed. I guess for me, doesn't matter if I'm sitting here or in your chair, is the lack of information and knowing exactly what's going to happen. We all need those reassurances that our community is going to be safe and our people, everybody's going to be taken care of. That's really important. And one night I was at a meeting and somebody asked me if I had any addictions, and I said, not that I know of. So I was asked, do you drink coffee? And I said, yeah, and I drink tea. But I don't do it all the time. But that was, and I had to think about that when I went home with that in mind, because apparently if I drink a lot of coffee and tea, those are addictions. So be careful. We get ourselves.
Make sure that I can work with it.
Yeah.
The target tenants for this are not just homeless, but more so the risk of being homeless. So we're looking at a large number of people within the community who are very inadequately housed or on the verge of losing their housing. That's a bigger part of the target than those homeless that we have on the street. Councillor Krog, keeping it tight because we have some questions from the back.
Okay, just a couple of things. That whole addiction thing. I'm an addict. I've been addicted to a lot of different things throughout my life. I deal with addiction every day to make sure that I'm not doing bad things. So I kind of have a history of living in places similar to that. A concern that hasn't been mentioned yet, Councillor Thompson talked about it, that they'll sign contracts and if they misbehave, they're up. Okay. So put 34 people in and 12 misbehave, they're out. So another 12 come in. You've just increased the street population by 12, and of the new ones, 4 get kicked out. Okay, now we've just increased our street population again. And the biggest thing, it doesn't matter how well we work with them, how much counseling. Oh, you need to, get some detox. Yeah, but well, where's that? So for us to just warehouse people, right, and talk nice to them doesn't make changes unless you have the ability, when they're ready, to get them into detox and treatment programs. So that's the biggest part. And is there anything we can do? Yeah, there's a parking variance that council, if they choose to, could vote down. But that's an easy get around actually for BC Housing. We can stand up as a community and somebody said legal action. Yeah, you can stand in front of a bulldozer or logging truck or a loader anywhere in this province. And yeah, pretty soon you'll get a court injunction that says you can't, but by then you also hit all the mainstream medias. And yeah, there is stuff that we could do. So.
And we have 3 hands in the back before we come over here.
Yeah, Mark Menzies. One of the things that we could look at, which doesn't have that much to do with the 2nd Street project per se, is where the women's shelter is now that's moving by the hospital. Why can't we as a group, like as the entire city, say to Interior Health, who I would imagine owns that building, make that into a detox / sort of semi rehab facility, and then move those people into housing once they've basically been detoxed. The whole concept of having drug addicts being allowed to openly use in the facility they live in, they're never going to get any better. There's just going to be drug addicts. I used an analogy that people that have never done drugs can maybe think about a little bit more. You can't take a recovering alcoholic and give him a room in the back of a pub because he'll end up as an alcoholic.
Thank you, Marty, but you do realize that they have alcohol maintenance programs right now that are working really well for people who are alcoholics.
Oh, yeah.
Where they give them alcohol on a controlled basis every day, and that is one of the most effective treatments for alcoholism that's working now. And we had some ladies in the back before we come to the front here.
Yeah, sure. Yes, thank you. Just on the back of Councillor Krog's comment, my question was actually in regards to that issue, that the parking variance is before council, but Councillor Krog did mention it's an easy get around for BC Housing if they so choose. Can I get some clarification on that from the planning department, please? Thank you.
Yes, I would ask planning if they could explain how they could get around the parking variance.
In the Local Government Act, a community has the ability by bylaw to allow developers to pay for parking rather than provide parking. Pretty much every single new development that's gone in the downtown core has had to give variances for parking in the last 20 years or so. So this is not unusual, it's done pretty regularly, and so we do have a bylaw in place that allows a developer to pay $1,000 per parking space rather than provide parking spaces. And it is legislated in the Local Government Act that it is at the choice of the developer to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Amber.
Hi, Amber Savala, Work and Play Clothing. One of our concerns with the development downtown is loitering. When you have a group of people that have formed a community here, some of those people may be able to access this facility and some may not. So those that are not able to access this facility would then loiter outside waiting for their friends to come out. Is council willing to put in an anti-loitering bylaw if this facility goes ahead?
Absolutely, we would look at controlling that, and there may be ways of doing it without a bylaw. However, I think that as we talked about before, we pressed BC Housing, we pressed the minister and told her to make it happen. We want to go and see facilities that are working. And so we've asked them to fast track that with their appropriate people. So from the top down, the minister is saying to her deputy minister, make those visits happen. I don't think there's any way that we can reduce the kind of concerns unless you get a visual of how these things are going to look. So you've been one of the people that have been on that list from the beginning. So yeah, loitering could certainly be a problem. And are we catching up here? Yes.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. My name is Nigel James and I'm a resident of Grand Forks. A couple of thoughts crossed my mind, and that is we are in a democracy and it's happening right now. Perhaps we should tell BC Housing that dictatorship does not go down well in Grand Forks. Whether it's with their ability to do it or not, it might make them think again and produce something that is going to work in the city. Secondly, on addiction, alcoholism, there are 2 million members of Alcoholics Anonymous. It works. And that, I would suggest, is one way of doing it. There is only one Narcotics Anonymous meeting in Grand Forks, to my knowledge, per week. But there could be more. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's arguing that there is a useful effect for abstinence as a treatment method. Pamela, sorry.
I just want to make a comment, and it may turn into a question. What somebody once said to me, when society fails, the community steps in. And I would really like to ask everyone in this room, what are we going to do for these individuals that don't make the vetting? What are we going to do for them? Because right now I can tell you, isolation and rejection is probably the hardest thing on all of them. What are we going to do to make these guys reach out for the help? Because what I can see right now, you're getting the community fears of the unknown as how this is going to be handled, because it's not looking like it's handled correctly. We've had 2, I'm going to say warming centers just surround this up. 2 centers to actually help the individuals that we're discussing up today. We haven't done anything to help improve them. We've put a roof over their head, we got them food. They're not freezing today. What are we going to do tomorrow to help these individuals? If we don't get the support from the community by giving them more information and show that this will work, if you guys choose to let this happen, what are you going to do to bring the community out to support these individuals so isolation and rejection doesn't happen further? And what are we going to do to get these guys reaching out to get the help? Who's going to speak for them? Because you need the help from the community as well. And what I have seen on the streets, people want to help. They want to be heard. But the thing is that they're not being asked. Everything is being swept underneath. And as the questions have been shown in this room, we don't like to be bullied. There's so many people out there that want to help. But if they're not asked to help, they're going to reject and isolate these further, and they're not going to get the help they need. We really need to do this job correctly. If it's done correctly, and putting it right at our gateway, I don't think this is the right way, because you're going to get the business fronts and the people walking, the seniors, the young individuals, the kids that are going to school as of today are fearing it when my neighbor has to escort them past individuals. And I'm sorry, I don't like isolating any of them. I don't like calling them names. But they need the help. This is further than just a roof over their head and a plate of food on the table.
Absolutely insightful, Pamela. I think clearly that's the group I'm most worried about, is the ones that don't make the VAT cut, because they're the ones at this point that are going to be dependent on some other kind of intervention. We have people there with severe mental health problems. We have people with severe addictions. They're not even going to be able to qualify at a beginning level for this program. How will our community deal with them? And we're not the only community with that hardcore group of really difficult to serve and house group. So yes, we're talking to mental health. We're talking to the RCMP. We're talking to the wraparound services, as they call them, to try and deal with this. I personally think there's got to be more interventions available to mental health than just talk counseling. Yep. And if we had that, at least we may be able to intervene with some of those people you're talking about. But that's very insightful. That is the problem. And
add to her point, we're talking about people with definite trust issues. They have addiction issues, and they have mental health components that we just aren't able to deal with. We're going to thrust them right into the center spotlight of town by putting them at 2nd Street.
Just a moment, Rusty. We're talking about the ones that don't fit in there?
And I'm talking about them as well.
Okay, you're blending the two together.
You're going to thrust this at-risk section of our community right into the spotlight of town. Right at the gateway, when everybody goes by. They are the most visible. They'll be in the biggest building we have downtown, the newest. The hottest hot button issue in town, with everybody waiting to see if it fails as it is presented right now. I don't think that that's the best area that we could put them in as well, because we are going to take you who's being hidden off to the side and put you center spotlight, right in the middle of town, where everybody who comes through, everybody who lives here is just waiting to see you fail. And we're putting you center stage. Big spotlight. I don't think that addresses the 10 to 15 people that really need the help. And honestly, a suggestion would be to wrap up a rehab detox facility for them, and then make something along the lines so that we have the chicken coops outside, not outside of town, but in a different, not highlighted area of town, to deal with our 10 to 15 problem people. We want them housed, we do, and we want them dealt with.
Or in jail.
I would like, for some of the, I swear that for some people, we believe they're like Jedi, that you can switch your color of your lightsaber and with no consequences. But for some, jail is a legitimate option, and the police services and the judicial part has been lacking as of late in town. But a lot of that has to do with not having the ability to put them anywhere.
Yes, not having resources themselves. I'm going to have to roll this up at this point. We've got a number of other things that are on the agenda for this morning. Les, you had a comment?
I just wanted to point out that these are all valid points. I get that. And if we don't have this housing facility, we'll still have the homeless, the problem people that we have. But July 17th, a year and a half ago, I was sitting in this very room here when I actually drafted a letter and sent it off to BC Housing. And the problem there wasn't so much the homeless. It was one individual in particular who was setting fires to keep warm at nighttime while the whole province was under a state of emergency. And people were worried, what are we going to do about this? Because the system would not incarcerate this person. They would not put this person away for everybody's benefit because he's a mental health issue. And that, none of this deals with that. And in 6 or 7 months, that's what we're going to be facing. Not just the homeless stealing from your garages and your yards and stuff, but we're going to be under another state of emergency more than likely. And we haven't had that much water, so we're going to be very dry here. Nothing here addresses that issue, and I'd like to see something stand up and address that. Sorry for interrupting all this.
No, but public safety is another issue that overlaps big time with this. So we are going to be putting resources in the city towards public safety. We haven't got the plan together yet, but we're working on that as an important issue. Councillor Zielinski.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just because we have a lot of people here, I'm looking for some expertise. Is there anybody here that knows of the IAP2 form of public participation?
No.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with acronyms, so I don't know what an IAP is.
Yeah, but that's the name of it. That's the whole name of it. That's why I'm asking. And it's just an international way of trying to get the public participating. But I'd like to send everybody away with some homework too. If this thing gets built, what does success look like? I hear no vagrants on the street. I hear crime rates don't go up. So whoever runs the facility, hopefully we can put these in front of them to say, you got to make these goals, because if we don't meet them, then it's a failure to us. So that's all.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say.
All right, we're wrapping it up, Councillor.
Just wanted to say, I think this has been a really, really good discussion. And I thank you, Russ and Pamela, for bringing it forward. And I hope it's not the last discussion, that BC Housing will come. We will have these meetings. They can address your concerns, because we have some of the same questions and we don't have the answers.
Okay. Councillor Mosley.
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, and thank you for the presentation, Mr. Moore. Yeah, I just want to point out that, reiterate, yes, we do have the same concerns. The problem is not so much people who are bullies, but people who think they know for you what's good for you. The term came up recently called professional reliance, where we rely on professionals to tell us how things are going to go. Doesn't always work well. I want to just reassure you that we are thinking deeply about this issue, both the location and the facility. And we are trying to go through it as best we can. Personally, I have faith in the community. I was terribly insulted on behalf of the community that BC Housing did not have faith in us. That we have shown in the past that we can be innovative, that we have shown in the past that we can look after ourselves. We deserve the chance to do it again. And this council is working very hard to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can we have a motion to accept the petition? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Corlett, all those in favor? Thank you very much for the presentation.
That's a bonus.
Just proves your support. Okay, I'm going to pass on the Area D discussions. I have things for tonight that we can bring up at the regular meeting, so unless there's someone who wants to make any comments on that. On the remuneration review, do we wish to deal with this at this point? You're seeing the options in front of you. If it just came out with the release, we can put this off if you want more time to discuss it. Councillor Thompson.
I like the idea of it being referred to a committee, an ad hoc committee.
You realize that Juliet has done a review of a number of municipalities?
Yes, she has, right. But I'm looking at the numbers and the percentages, and I didn't realize that Grand Forks was way up there at 75% for councillors of the mayor's stipend. So I like the idea of our CFO going out advertising for people to sit on a committee to review it and to come back with a report. And it doesn't have to be done in the immediate future. But
okay, and the other option there is that we not advertise, but we choose people who would do that review. Again, the advantage there would be to pick people who know about municipal finance and the situation in municipalities.
Yep, and I don't disagree with you, but that would be perhaps perceived
as a conflict,
as preferential. So
okay, point taken. Councillor Zielinski, and then we'll talk.
Mr. Mayor, whatever we do, I think we have to go back to the bylaw to begin with. So the last clause in that bylaw is very prescriptive on how we do this thing. So if we're going to do something different, we'd have to change that bylaw before we go forward.
Point. And
Nigel James speaking again. As I've said before in this public meeting some years ago, I love mathematics. And I've done some analysis on the figures that were given. And I would like to volunteer myself for this ad hoc committee. I've got the results here and now if you want them. But,
yeah, I'm not sure that we have time for them this morning, but we could certainly take your
anyway,
offer. Summary.
Having got the work done on finding out the information from other cities and towns, it is a good way of starting to decide what is a right and reasonable remuneration for the council and as such.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. All right, can we have a motion on this to move it somewhere? Councillor Thompson, what do you want done with this?
Well, I have to plead, I haven't read the bylaws, so I don't know what the last
It's attached to me.
What the option is there.
We put a motion to defer.
So your worship, the first part for the option one recommendation is that committee of the whole receives report and just ask staff to proceed with the proposed work plan, which would be basically in compliance with what Councillor Thompson is suggesting, is that it would be a very lengthy procedure. For the most part, in the remuneration expenses, is something that would normally come to a council prior to an election for a new council to come in, which is generally would be in the fall. So we're looking at something right now that is right in the middle of the budget season. That's why it's kind of going to be a lengthy process. So if council is fine with this process, then it's just a matter of putting forward that resolution. The option 2 was one that if council wanted to look at some of the different ones, because there was scenarios brought in to the previous council that showed some different scenarios that would allow council to look at changing the percentages of perhaps raising the mayors up to match kind of what other communities are doing. And so that's why staff offered that second option in there. So those are the two.
So would Councillor Zelinski, you're supporting the second option, that we should change the rules before we?
No, all I'm saying is our bylaw stipulates that we won't look at this till 2022, so if we do something different, we should change the bylaw.
Right, and that's what I see option 2 as. We don't have a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion.
Of option 2?
No, I'll make a motion that we table this issue until our first meeting in July of this year.
July. And is there some reason why you chose July?
It just gets us through freshet, gets us through tax season, gets us through all that stuff. And you know, whether or not the committee, which I do support the idea of, whether they want to do retroactive pay if that's what they choose, whether they push it 20 years down the road for a increase, whatever.
Seconder for that motion. Councillor Thompson, discussion?
That's behind you.
So your worship, I just wanted to make sure some clarity that when we're tabling it, that there will be no action until July on any advertising or anything, so we'll come back to council for a discussion at that point.
That's the way I would understand the motion.
Good, thank you.
No further discussion. All those in favor? Carried. We don't need a seconder for motions in camera. I keep doing that, it's a forced habit. All right, we're going to the multifamily development project in front of us. This would be at tonight's meeting that we would address this 19th Street. There's also public hearings tonight on bylaw and on this item. And so we're opening it up for discussion here today from the audience and from council.
I would make the motion.
So, the motion is to approve the development permit. We don't need a seconder on that. It's going to have to be made at a regular meeting tonight. Councillor Thompson, or no, Councillor Croggs.
I have issues with this one too, just saying. Don't believe it's in the right location. My understanding, next to the existing facility that's there, it just doesn't make sense that you'd have 100+ people walking or driving by it every single day. And it kind of, well, it really disappointed me when I look at the plans and it shows the townhouses and it shows the apartment block, okay? My understanding was that the apartment block was going to be here, the townhouses here next to the existing subdivision. So, single family development, townhouse. Not townhouse over here, apartment block, single family. It doesn't make sense to me why they did that, so.
Thank you. Councillor Zelinski.
So this being another BC housing project, I need a little clarification because with the 2nd Street project, we were told from BC Housing that until we have an operator, we don't let anything out. So I'm kind of concerned, or my question is, who is the operator of this facility? And just like the 2nd Street project, what are the criteria for people to actually rent these places?
None of that is in front of us at this point. I don't believe it was part of the package.
So your worship, the reason why this is coming to council is that this is a development permit. It meets the criteria of all the zoning pieces. So the piece that is before council for discussion right now is the form and character of the property. So that's the big difference is that once a development permit comes to the staff's table, that it comes to council for a decision. And so that is why you see this.
And I guess that's my point on what we heard this morning about being bullied and whatnot. We've been told by the same organization for the Second Street project, you don't get any prints, you don't get any drawings, you don't get anything until we get an operator for the facility. Yet here's another one and they're doing something totally different. So
let's hear from planning here.
This is just housing. It's no different than the Gables, it's no different than Parkview Manor, so it's run by BC Housing just like the Gables and Parkview Manor are. So to qualify to get in, it's you apply to BC Housing, and if you fit the criteria for income levels, then you're in. So it's just a typical BC Housing development. But it also does come with operating funds for the next 35 years.
And is referred to as supported. In various clauses, they refer to supported, so they are looking at the fact that there are supports planned for this facility, right? Or you don't see supported?
No, the supports are the operational funding. So this is, like I said, this is basically the same as the Gables or Parkview Manor. So you apply to BC Housing. It's income based. So if you meet the income cutoff requirements for the facility, and just so you know, I've already had 2 seniors call me about this development and ask me when they can get in. So they're excited about it because it's going to be, they've got 6, I believe they're proposing 6 accessible units for wheelchair and for persons with disabilities. And they're going to have elevators, and so like I said, I've already had 2 folks inquiring and wanting to get on the list to get in.
Okay, Councillor Moslin and then Councillor Krog, and then we're going to go to the audience next. I'm sorry, did I miss you?
Yes.
Well, get me in the loop somehow.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, both these projects and actually the other one that we're considering today, the Boundary Drive one, point to our zoning bylaw. And I'm quite apprehensive that we are both being taken advantage of because of our zoning bylaw and weaknesses in it. Anyhow, this project seems to be, theoretically, and help me if I'm wrong, it's our residential 3, multifamily residential zone, and apparently there's ambiguity somewhere in the zoning bylaw 40.7. Okay, so let's take a look at zoning bylaw 40.7. And it says 40.7, and it's supposed to be ambiguous.
We're waiting.
One of the following types of dwelling units are allowed. Multifamily dwellings or B, apartment units. Now, that doesn't sound too ambiguous, Mayor, except that it says one of the following types of dwelling units are allowed. Well, Mayor, at this point, on this particular parcel, we'll have 4 buildings on this particular parcel. And I'm kind of apprehensive here that they're trying to do an end run around our zoning bylaw, which I really don't have a lot of faith in.
And our planning department loves those challenges of answering those kind of questions. Please.
When we undertook the update of the SCP, our second theme was affordable housing. So we made a bunch of changes to the official community plan, and the changes include a variety of housing stock, affordable housing, tiny homes, and basically the theme of the OCP and the intent was to eliminate the red tape that we had in the zoning bylaw to make it easier for us to provide affordable housing for our citizens. So the fact that that says one of these dwellings was actually a typo, and it got missed when we did the OCP. The intent was to be the same as the R3A zone, which says these types of dwelling units are allowed on this type, in this zoning. It was never meant to say that one unit was allowed on the zone, because if you're trying to increase housing stock and variety in a multifamily residential zone, you're not going to, if you'd prefer to have a 150 unit apartment building there, we could allow that, which is not going to work in Grand Forks. A 150 unit apartment building might work in Burnaby or Vancouver or Kelowna, but it's not going to work in Grand Forks. So loosening up the OCP to allow for the variety of housing stock that we need was the intent of the bylaw. So it was, like I said, it was a typo. It was a little bit of copy and paste errors that we were trying to get an updated zoning bylaw. It was never meant to say that.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
No. Not really, Mayor, because I don't know what I'm looking at anymore. What bylaw am I supposed to be looking at? I really would love to support this housing project. With all my heart, I really would. We need it desperately, no question. I am really concerned about access, Mayor. Even though we've had our professionals look at it and say, okay, we can get all those people in and out one exit on 19th. I'm going, whoa. Well, it's a good thing there's empty fields to the north and the south, so people can get in and out. And I'm sure that's what's going to happen, is people are going to be walking in and out north and south of this complex because the fields are empty, or at least they're empty right now. Anyhow, I'm just. This project, finally we get it. Here it is on paper on Thursday. And oh, by the way, we have to change the bylaw. I'm getting kind of frazzled with this building bylaw.
Yeah.
Anyhow, sorry, Mayor. That's my frustration at this point.
Thank you. And we'll take Councillor Krog, and then we'll go to audience. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing, then
Please.
I'll shut up. I was told that BC Housing monitors our chat pages. Facebook. I'm sitting there thinking, oh, that's awesome. And odds are maybe they'll see this video. So this is the same thing. You're allowed, we're given the permission to decide on form and character. So I would like brown trim, not tan trim, on 2nd Street or 19th Street. And in case they do, like, it's just total crap. And if they ever see this video, BC Housing, you suck.
All right, and we're going to go to the back for a comment and then over to Nigel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Barry Jarvis. Again, the 19th Street project is sort of like the 2nd Street project. When will us peons get even to look at an artist rendering? What does it look like? What do we know?
We don't have one for the 2nd Street, absolutely not.
Then tell them to shove it. I mean, cooperate with us, folks. Quit trying to shove it down our throats. Tell us what it's going to be. You know, one access. My God, for how many people in there? Maybe it's going to be like the Gables, and which probably works pretty damn good. But they got one access out onto 68th Avenue that's not a road, but everybody uses it. You know,
to be clear, to pass through the planning process, they had to have the permission of the fire marshal, the fire chief.
Okay, but where's an artist rendering that we can look at to see what these things are going to actually look like?
There's the one for 19th, but you don't have one for 2nd.
Okay, that's the first time I've seen that. It's not been published before anywhere that I'm aware of.
This is the first time.
Yeah,
is it? Okay. Thank you.
Neglecting Councillor Zielinski here, please.
Words matter. So we can't say that our bylaw has a typo in it, otherwise then maybe our parking spots are a typo too, or these things. So words do matter. So Councillor Moslin made a very good point of this is very prescriptive. It's very clear to everybody what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And I think we should follow our bylaws, I guess, is my point.
I just want to make a comment about the Second Street project, is that the reason that we have no rendering is because they just selected the proponent last week. So until we actually have a rendering of what something's supposed to look like, we can't present anything. And if this was a private developer, they don't have to bring anything forward. They would come in for the development permit, so nobody would see the development until it went in the agenda on the Thursday prior to the regular meeting. And if it was a private developer, that's how it would go. Development in larger centers is very competitive, and if that information is leaked out prior to a proper public official process, communities get sued. So they're a developer just like anybody else. We treat them like anybody else with the same process, and we have to be, it's confidential until it meets the public process and or the developer chooses to release the information. But they're not going to release something half-baked. They won't release the information until they have a chosen design and a chosen proponent.
Okay, Nigel, quick.
Quick one. As planning spoke about the Second Street thing, perhaps I could just add a couple of words. I wrote to you all about 2 months ago and suggested a way of getting around the parking problem was build an underground car park and put the building on the top, and that would solve that problem. It's a bit expensive, and BC Housing can pay for it. Regarding the 17th Street development, 2 years ago there was the plan about the transition house and the transition organization. That has now been built, it is almost finished, and the plan was, as far as I remember, which was spoken to us, and that was the land behind the transition house was for, in the future, for small houses for people who've moved on from the transition house into their own homes, etc. And you look at, I look at the plan here. There is, the transition house is not noted on the plan.
Nigel, can I just move it along here? I clearly, the second stage housing that they were planning there will likely be built into the low-income family units that they're putting in there. And there is a lot of discussion in terms of that facility at all being where it is. So those are things that we need our professionals to work out in terms of what's going to be best for that population and for the Women's Center, which is, you know, they've just moved in there. So yes, I understand your concern, and I think that's one of the problems that the professionals will face in terms of serving that community. But we've got to move it on here. Councillor Krog, a quick one.
Yeah, in response to staff, absolutely correct. It was a private developer. This stuff wouldn't even be coming here. Problem is, they're not a private developer. Yeah. They're a creature of the province, as we are. So we should be working together. Right? So
Ideally, and putting strength behind Councillor Moslin's petition, or not petition, what he's putting in front of AKBLG as a motion. Kate in the back.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, I would just like to clarify Council's role here. My understanding and my reading of what's before us today is that similar to other developments, say the Tim Hortons development that the last council dealt with, Council's role here is to approve form and character. Is that?
That's the only question in this.
That's the only question we're dealing with, right?
There from planning. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, how are we doing for time here? I've got a number of people who are not technically on the list here that we want to hear from this morning. Can we move on with this? We're being faced with this evening, that we will make a decision on this.
We have to vote on the resolution. Right?
Yes, to move this forward to tonight. The motion is clear.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Zielinski.
Just clarification, in the motion presented to council, it ends with drawings contained in Appendix A.
Yes.
There's other appendices also in there, is there not?
Do they need to be in the motion?
And I guess.
Or is this A because it's form and character?
Well, and I guess I just want to be very sure that the landscaping plan is part of that, because as Councillor Krog mentioned, that's the only buffer between the residential and that building are those trees, and make sure that those get
Yeah.
So your worship, if it suits council, we could just say contained in Appendix A off and just say drawings.
How about as presented?
Sure.
Because we have everything in there.
Okay, modifying that motion to take off specifically reference to A. Motion's on the floor. You're making the motion?
Sure.
We don't need a second or further discussion. This will be on tonight's agenda. All those in favor? Carried. So we've moved it through to tonight. Opposed?
Yeah.
Councillor Krog opposed. Thank you. Moving on to the development permit for non-medical cannabis retail license on Central Avenue. Opening that for discussion. This would be to proceed with the statutory requirements of public notice. So that's what we're moving it forward here for. You can see that there are a couple of references there to 100-meter setback and things that we have in process of change after the public hearing tonight. Yes?
I'd just like to hear your staff's comments on why their variances.
Why the variances?
Why the variances and why the recommendation for the variances, I guess.
Okay, well, we've got a list of variances there. I think the one that I would like to comment on from planning is that we didn't decide to change the 100 meters from public places. Is that the wording that is there? Public facilities?
Yeah, so what's coming tonight, the public hearing as well as for approval, is what we talked about was changing the 100 meters from each store, was removing that limitation, and the other one that we had talked about was the 50 meters from the highway. This is our first application, so we don't have any issues with the 100 meters to another store because we don't actually have another store to deal with for that. So what we have here is looking at, they're asking us for council to reduce the distance to a community use zone from 100 meters to 15 meters, and to reduce the distance from a youth-centered facility, which in this case is the Fred Walker Development Center, from 100 meters to 91 meters. And the third that they're asking us to reduce is the 50 meters to the highway, but if the zoning bylaw passes tonight, then that won't be required. So unfortunately, we're doing things at the same time here, so we can approve this, and then if that's removed from the zoning bylaw, then it's not an issue as long as it's approved.
I think the one that's interesting here is that planning is suggesting that we hold the 100 meters from a public place. Public place? I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah, it's youth-centered facility or community use zone.
Community use. It gives us a control measure in terms of where any outlet would go at this point. So just keeping in some controls over where cannabis stores would go, while getting friendly in terms of some of the things that make no scientific sense at all. Councillor Thompson.
I guess my question through you to Dolores is, what about Gerald Park?
Well, we've had a liquor establishment there for many, many, many years, and again, that is a question. It is left to council's choice. If you wish to call attention to that as a violation, then you have that right to do that. Council has that right to do that. So it's a hammer that we have in terms of controlling locations. We don't have many.
Couldn't see the circle.
Yeah, so what council, your choice here is to choose whether or not to move forward with the public notification process. So at this point, you can make a decision to say, no, we're not going to look at varying these distances. And that would basically put the end to it. I would send to the province that council has rejected the application. or council could choose to go through the public notification process, which is a process that we have to do for the province. So I have to collect public input and put together a report and send that in with either a recommendation for yes, that it's supported by the city, or no, it is not supported by the city. My understanding is that the province could still allow them the way they're worded, but I suspect that's only in situations where maybe the processes aren't established as we do have at Grand Forks. So if council chooses to say no to this application, I believe that would probably be the end of it. If council chooses to say yes to the application, I would have to put in my report that we're varying the distance to community use zone, we'd be varying the distance to a youth-centered facility. That would all go in my report to the province. The province might still reject it. So it's this is just our process here that we're going through to determine whether or not council's okay with the location of this facility, and then it still would go to the province for final approval.
So a liquor store and a cannabis store together, different entrances, which still has been quite a controversial thing in the past. You have the ability right now to stop this application going forward if you so wish. Although I don't see a really strong argument for the community use thing when that area has traditionally been right beside a liquor store for 120 years. Let's get a comment from the gallery.
Do we have empty businesses in the downtown core? Like empty shops? So basically, as I see it, you just want to expand onto the Winnie, another building.
It would use the existing building, it would just use a portion of it.
But we could have them put the same, and it'll be a separate entity?
Yeah, separate entrance.
Couldn't we just have them move into the downtown core?
You know that we have at least 2 that I know of right now that are planned for the downtown core.
We have one that's beside, in the same facility next to Lordco.
We don't have applications from those people yet, so.
Yes, but we have applications from this one.
Yeah, good
So
point.
we could promote moving this and have another open shop downtown, making it look busier. Good.
Amber.
Amber Zabala from Work and Play. So the one issue I see with this is that council is reducing the 100-meter between businesses. And this is the only control left from council to restrict where cannabis business can go. And as you said, there's already 2 others that you know of downtown that wish to open cannabis retail stores. So if we just open this up and say it doesn't matter if it's next to Fred Walker, it doesn't matter if it's next to Gyro Park, we're kind of making it free game, because the first one on the table, you're allowing variances, so don't all the other ones get variances too?
We're keeping one hammer, that's to a public use area. Councillor Zelensky.
Just more of an observation, Mr. Mayor, is both staff, both the previous council put a lot of time into these changes to our zoning bylaw for cannabis outfits. And the very first application we get, we're waiving all the setbacks. That doesn't make sense to me.
Councillor Thompson, Councillor Corlick.
I think this is a good discussion. However, going through the process and serving a notification, and it will come back to council, we will have the final hammer. I personally am not in favor of it, but I want to hear from others and through following due process.
Would you like to make that a motion to get it on the table?
Yes.
And Councillor, no, you don't. Ask him, he knows. Councillor Corlick and then Councillor Mott.
My concern with having that cannabis store right where it is the Gyro Park, the library, and all things in
Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons too, wherever it is. And in the snow pile in the corner, I guess. But is the fact that I know there's a liquor store there, and I know the Winnie's been there for beginning in time, but it's alcohol usage and is not allowed in public use. The determination of how the use of cannabis is going to be in the public park. I think there's a lot that's gonna be in consideration, and because it is a public area, and it is close to the library, so I can't say that
And we don't control public smoking any more than
I
cigarettes.
know, but alcohol and
But I'm
pot-
making your point that,
Yeah.
that people could smoke in the park and
Yeah.
not be breaking any bylaws.
Yeah, but
Or
still,
provincial rules at this point.
I'm a little concerned about the whole thing.
Councillor Moslin?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any problems with the location at all, but I'm really stuck on the process. I guess the question I have through you to the mayor is if we pass our bylaw amendments and setbacks to what's been
Tonight,
proposed,
yeah.
would we still be having to scrutinize this for a particular proposal?
It would be 8 feet or 8 meters that we would have a problem with in terms of the setback from other stores.
From Fred Walker School? Is that,
No,
I think
no.
that's the one, isn't it?
No, you know where this is?
Oh, where's your map? Our circle.
So we're taking,
But don't confuse that circle with a youth-centered facility and community use. So this law allows right up to community use and.
Yeah, that's what I think
Yeah.
you're trying to.
So I think I'm getting there.
There it is. There's the.
We still need a variance, even if, for this particular applicant.
They will.
We still need a variance even when the next bylaw, or the proposed bylaw changes.
yes, they will.
So they'll still be back, so we can either give them the variances now, or wait.
Send them out and get the information and the public response, which is Councillor's motion.
Right, and then do it all again.
Well, and then we've got a second look at it with public input,
Which is fair to the business.
which is fair to the business. Ready for the vote on this matter? Sending it as recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor, did you want to explain your opposition?
Well, no, because I think the public had a chance to comment on it when the regulations were changed at the public hearing for the 100-meter setback from community use. And again, I don't want to dump on the library any more than we need to. Like they've got challenges as it is.
Okay, point. All right. While we're doing the cannabis topic, we are dealing tonight at the meeting with the issue of the medicine tree operations. Jim is here this morning, and I would invite you to say a few words, Jim, in terms of tonight's issue.
Sure. Do you want me to sit up or?
Yeah, you can yell or you can use the microphone.
Okay.
Whatever works.
Well, I can just speak from where I'm sitting. So maybe could I just seek some clarification on the matter that will be discussed tonight, in particular to the medicine?
What I see happening is that it's recommended that we look at a temporary use permit, if we so wish. At this point, that would give you an opportunity to move towards legalizing your operation.
Right.
That would recognize the medical nature of what you're doing, that would capture the fact that there are no edibles at this point in the legal market, and that you have a customer base of medical users that are using edibles. I made those points to council here.
Okay.
So what we're looking at is a decision there in terms of whether we go ahead, and the temporary use permit would involve process as well.
Sure.
So your worship, there's nothing that would be coming tonight unless council wanted to go further. So this piece here was to have council have a discussion on some of the
Right.
questions and the issues, and if council so wished to have something brought tonight, we could.
Right, I
could
made
bring
that
in.
offer that you would
Yeah,
craft
we could
something
do
to
something
match
else,
our
so that would
discussion.
be council's direction at
Right.
that point, yeah.
So it's pretty wide open, and what we're facing here is the reality of the fact that the medicine tree is continuing to operate, and that we have a number of other businesses that are heading towards opening in our town. But in the meantime, we do not have another cannabis operation open for the kind of service that Medicine Tree is giving.
Yeah, medical, not recreational.
Yes.
And that's what Jim is stating, that his base is a medical base.
I can give some additional information if that would help everybody to understand what we do and what we're attempting to do in the transition to legalization. So just quickly, I'll explain. We are strictly a medical cannabis dispensary. We have always been that. We operate based on a very stringent application process, so we do require a prescription for cannabis from a physician. There is no diversion from that. We are strictly medical. So over the time that we've been in operation, we now serve a significant portion of the seniors and the chronically ill in this community. Over the time that I've been running this with my partner, Marvin Wires, we now actually have referrals from physicians in this community directly to our front door with prescription in hand. There's a level of confidence now that we have with the hospital, with Hospice Society, with the physicians that all of our members have as prescribing physicians. So we have really gone out of our way to stay away from recreational cannabis and anything to do with it. Our interest is purely medical and on making sure that the people that rely on our services don't go without their medicine during a transitionary time where dispensaries around the province and the country are shutting down to comply and to seek a non-medical retail license. So right now we're at a significant access crisis in this province and in this country, where the whole question of medical cannabis dispensaries and literally the millions of people who rely on them coast to coast have been left out of this discussion en masse. So I need to be very clear that the regulation changes that everyone is seeking to comply with are to do with non-medical retail adult use cannabis. We have zero interest in that. So what are we doing about it? So this is our plan. Just very briefly, I was a board member on the Canadian Association for Medical Cannabis Dispensaries. This was between 2017 and April 2018. Now, as part of that board, I went with the director and the other board members to the legislature. We spoke to Solicitor General Mike Farnworth. We spoke to a variety of individuals who are responsible for this transition. And in doing so, we wanted to see that there were few barriers as possible to current participants in the industry who want to go legal, but that also people who serve medical patients and medical patients that currently access a diverse range of products that you will not see on the shelves of these recreational shops, certainly not for the foreseeable future. They really have a serious need to access these products. So what we did is we brought to their attention this great gap between medical access and sustaining that access during this transitionary time. Unfortunately, nothing's been done about that. This is not the responsibility of the province. This comes from the federal government and Health Canada. So what we did is we have an office and dispensary in Nelson. At the time, we believed that the only way to transition and to survive this was to go and seek a non-medical retail license. Since that, we did apply for that. Now, in the process in Nelson, we're extremely close to getting that license. Council has just approved our application. It then moves to the province, and we're looking at, we have to do renovations to put in a storage room, and then submit to a final inspection from the province prior to being approved and issued a license. So, what's happened in the interim, because this is not a good thing for our members, as Mayor Taylor has already mentioned, they need access to these products that are not in the retail shops, and they won't be. These are edibles, these are tinctures, these are concentrated tinctures, these are topicals. These types of products are not available. So what we have done in the meantime is we have, our lawyer has given us counsel that there are 2 court cases that are playing into this. So what we want to do is stay medical. That's our goal. We would like to seek licensing as a federal sales license to be put on a medical cannabis dispensary. Now, there's no way to apply for that right now. Health Canada hasn't opened that up to dispensaries, and the whole transition to legal cannabis has said you either go non-medical or you shut down. So now, there's actually 2 court cases in play. One is in front of the BC Court of Appeal. This is appealing the BC Supreme Court decision that went against some dispensaries in Vancouver on a few related issues. That is now going to be heard in front of the BC Court of Appeal. We are looking at that and waiting to see what the court will direct. The court has the option, it has several options in front of it. It has the option to allow licensing of dispensaries, or at least to substantiate that they provide reasonable access to cannabis. Okay? So reasonable access to cannabis is required by law since the Regina versus Parker decision in 2000 in the Ontario Court of Appeal, and Allard versus Canada 2016 in Vancouver Federal Court. And I'll just get to the end of it here. So there is another court case, and we're part of this, and it's going to be filed in the Federal Court Trial Division in Vancouver. And we are seeking an injunction, first of all, against the sections of the Cannabis Act that prevent dispensaries from being properly licensed to offer these services that they've been offering for, in the case of our industry, generally 20 years. So we're looking for that injunction. We're also looking for a declaration that dispensaries do provide the constitutionally mandated reasonable access to medicine that these Canadians require. So in a nutshell, a temporary use permit to allow us to continue to serve these patients and these members so they don't go without and don't suffer the harm of having barriers to their access to medicine would be wonderful. And in the meantime, what we need to determine for ourselves is, will the court direct Health Canada to allow us to be licensed? Or if they don't, it seems to put us in the position of having one option, and that is to ultimately transition to a non-medical retail license.
Okay, so a lot of information on the ins and outs of where things sit. I think clearly the medicine tree is taking a big risk here, knowing the stuff that's been happening, that they could get interfered with by the RCMP. That's not our business, but I think that we need to address the issue of whether we would sustain the operations. And so the council has an option here that has been offered, which is that staff would craft a motion for tonight or not, open for discussion. Councillor Krog?
Yeah, we should be looking at that temporary use permit. I just find it interesting. It started out with medical, and now it's gone swinging this way to retail, but they're not dealing with the medical issue, which is what these people need, like CBD and the other tinctures and that type of product that they have. So I would be in favor of crafting something that would allow for a temporary use permit.
Councillor Zielinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess what I'm struggling with is number 6 on the staff report that says if we give a temporary license and they don't get a provincial one, what next?
Yeah.
I'm struggling with that.
I can answer that, actually. If that were to happen, and that was, we reached the end of that road, and we didn't get that non-medical retail license, and we had no wherewithal to go to a federal sales license if the courts didn't decide that, we're at the end of the road. We have no choice.
Close down in that circumstance.
We would have to close down, because at this point, we're looking to transition responsibly so we don't hurt our members. We also don't want to be irresponsible to the community that we're offering our service in. We realize there's a transition going on. We need to take into consideration the ability of ourselves to maintain access for these people. They are some of the most chronically ill people that you'll meet in this community, and that's important.
Yeah, that's sort of my question.
Councillor Zielinski, I can see the wheels turning.
Yeah, the definition of temporary, or since in the courts, who knows how long that's going to take. So that would be my question is,
if we would craft it in such a way that it would either have a twilight or we could recall it for discussion. Councillor Thompson?
Is the federal government not considering passing legislation to legalize the medical marijuana?
Well, actually, they have. Medical cannabis is legal across the country, and it has been since 2001, when the first regulations were passed. The issue that is largest, I think, for this medical zone is that the patients who access cannabis from the federal system are running into some severe roadblocks now.
Okay, Jim, I'm going to stop here because I don't think that's what Councillor Thompson's asking.
Mm-hmm.
Your operation is illegal, and all of your suppliers are illegal. That's clearly what the situation is.
They're not currently licensed under the Cannabis Act, you're correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's what you were clarifying.
Yeah, but I thought that the federal government was moving to remove that roadblock.
I can answer that, and I was. So the issue is this: those products are all those diverse range of products are legal for patients, but right now they must manufacture them at home. That leads to taking too much THC in many cases. It's not advantageous. But because those products are not offered in the federal program yet, or in the recreational program, there is a significant gap between these people and the products they need to, in essence, live without pain or to live.
Okay, we're again watching the time here, but in front of us is the option here of asking to have staff draft up this option in terms of a temporary use permit that would go through the temporary use permit process with a time frame attached to some kind of review approach to it.
Time again, instead of dumping this on staff to get something done for tonight, why not push it to our next meeting?
We could do that if we don't want to.
That would be a recommendation, so we get a few days.
Okay, so that the motion is acceptable, then that we move this to the next regular meeting of council.
I'll make
that motion.
Yeah.
Don't need a seconder. All those in favor? Carried. All right, thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
The other person that's here is Dan, who is wanting to comment on the development of the housing development on, what's the street?
Boundary Drive.
Donaldson Drive? Boundary Drive, yeah, on Boundary Drive. Can they not discuss this before the public hearing? Can they make comment and discuss matters before the public hearing?
That's the process.
Yeah.
After the public hearing, we can't.
Yeah, once we've held the public hearing,
Right.
we cannot present council with any new information.
Right, and council
To make your
is expected
decision.
not to discuss it amongst themselves and get more information.
Yeah, you can get clarification on items, but not
Right.
new information, because it needs to be a fair process for the public, so they need to see the exact same information and have access to the exact same information as council to make their decisions.
But in fact, at this time, prior to the public hearing, we're open to discuss this matter. And I think that's what we ran into. I know you comment online on that we were not to discuss it, but between the minutes being released and us actually going into the public hearing, I can't see muzzling people from discussing these matters.
Okay, because I know Mr. Howard,
Dan Harlow.
Dan Harlow, wanted to talk to me, and I felt as a counselor that I could do that until so that everybody had the benefit of hearing what Mr. Harlow had to say. And because it was going to public hearing, so I declined.
Okay, and I think that's an understanding that I clarified with some other people as well, that this period of time we can discuss it and not be violating the rules of a public hearing. Okay, Mr. Harlow, would you like to say a word or two about your situation?
I would like to just stay here.
Yes, for sure.
I have Kleenex on hand because I'm very emotional about this.
We share that.
To me, this has been foisted upon me. I've lived on here for, perhaps I should just give you what I'm going to be submitting tonight, because I don't believe I can speak to it properly without breaking down. Is that acceptable?
It certainly is.
I'm on a steep learning curve. I've tried to be apolitical my entire life. I do my civic duty. for trying to be informed on the information that's going in my community, provincially, federally, and I vote. But otherwise, I try to be as apolitical as possible. I don't discuss my political views.
Is this material we're going to be receiving this evening?
Some of it is, I was planning on submitting a 3-page thing because I just feel I'll break down similar to what I'm doing now. In discussion, I've contacted everybody in the council, as Councillor Thomas alluded to. Councillor Thomas declined to talk to me under the impression that she wasn't allowed to. Councillor Moslin, he did reply to my email saying, give me a time to phone, but I've never heard back from him. And I have talked to Zach and Rod and Neil and yourself, Mr. Mayor. And I'm finding one thing that's particularly interesting is that some terms are being bounced around as in being synonymous, and that's regarding manufactured homes, modular homes versus mobile homes. And there are distinct differences between them all. I also deal a little bit with the tiny homes on wheels, and I've also made up most of this is direct off the internet. It's easily found by anybody. I didn't provide links. But basically there's a confusion between what a modular home is and what a mobile home is. They're all manufactured homes. They're made in factories. We're enclosed factories with where they can manufacture several units at the same time. Back in the 70s, and I'm going to try, I know you're pressed for time, so I'm going to try and summarize this really quick.
Thanks.
Back in the 70s, when you bought a 12 by whatever, 60, 68, 64, the axles, wheels, braking system, suspension, and hitch all came with it. In which case, the company would come in, move it into the spot, and generally that's where it sat for its life. And it would be bought and sold as people moved in and out. In the 80s, when the 14 wide started becoming the norm for mobile homes, most mobile home manufacturers stopped supplying the wheels, the hitch, and it was up to the company that would move it to put a dolly underneath that had the wheels, suspension, braking, and hitch unit, put it on site, and then put it up on blocking, usually situated on a pad, but it's not affixed to the ground, therefore it remains mobile. Modular homes, and these terms, for whatever reason, are being used synonymously, but modular homes are not mobile. They're manufactured in a factory setting. They're brought to the site, usually on a low bed. From what I'm watching, I'm not doing this sort of thing, and they're permanently affixed to a foundation, so they become similar to a house. In reference to tiny houses on wheels, which if manufactured pre-manufactured in a factory situation, they have to meet CSA standards, and if they're manufactured, which they're allowed to do on-site, they have to meet local building codes. Bottom line with tiny houses on wheels, even though they're in vogue, there's TV shows about them, they're really cool actually, but could I live in one? No. But the bottom line is they have wheels on them, so they're mobile homes. And then there's always the question that's part of this whole thing is depreciation and appreciation. And mobile homes, as described, 70s right up to now, when they come in on wheels, they depreciate in value over time, similar to the way a motor vehicle depreciates over time. A modular home gains value similar to the way a standard house would. Further information is easily found on the internet regarding that. So again, I will submit that tonight as part of my written submission, but I did want to talk about that because it just, the terms of reference seem to change and not everybody seems to be on the same page as to what this development is going to be. I've read, well, I found out about it actually a week ago last Friday, officially. I've heard rumors about it over January, but I try not to pay attention to rumors, nor do I try to spread rumors. But it came out officially in the newspaper, and my understanding, because my original documents that I found were under council meetings and agenda, when I tried to revisit and find those documents, I couldn't find them. I understand that websites are live things, and administrator of the website may move things without notice from one place to another, and I couldn't find it. I had to ask Zach to help me find these things. I did find information from the 28th meeting, which almost sounds like it's a done deal already. And somebody here earlier who was talking about the 2nd Street project asked the very pertinent question, would you like it next door to you or in your neighborhood? So as a consequence, I've lived on 16th Street, which is the parallel street to the west of Boundary Drive, for over 20 years now. I lived in one house for 20 years. My children have grown up and moved away. I've been looking to downsize for many years. And last spring, in March, the house at the end of the street, which is a 2-bedroom house, perfect for downsizing to it. I actually looked at it 17 years ago, but it just wouldn't work because my kids were still at home. And so I bought it. I paid top dollar for it. Location, 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 as real estate would like to say. I love the location.
So Dan, I need you to tell us in summary, what are the things that you think this will do in terms of the detriment to your community? Could you? Well, on that, I was trying to get to that as fast as I could. I feel it's going to reduce the enjoyment of my own property, which is going to be kitty corner to it. My northeast corner is going to meet their southwest corner. Traffic? Not so much on my street, but there is the noise issue, and I have looked at their proposal, and they're asking for what I consider significant variances to the mobile home bylaw of 1977 to make this thing work. One of the things I'm concerned about is their fence proposal, because currently the bylaw says that the entire property must be fenced. We have a riparian ecological sensitive zone, which they say they're going to do a report on. I don't know if this report has been done yet. I don't see them being able to do it at this time of year with over a foot of snow on the ground. So I don't, and then they're asking for modifications or variants to the existing bylaw, which states that they have to do a tight board fence, which I read as a privacy fence, or a vegetative screen like junipers and cedars to a maximum height of 1.8 meters for either the fence or for the bushes. Now they're asking for a variance to put in chain link fence or a combination thereof. And then this fence is only going to be 4 feet high. Now, Mr. Mayor, in our quick discussion that we had over the weekend, he said to me, what could they do that would make me more happy? Well, of course, I don't want to see this go through at all. But having thought about it more, I would like to see that west boundary, which is the fence, chain link fence they're proposing, that I will be looking at day in, day out for the, hopefully, well, maybe the rest of my life, which I think is ugly, and it's not going to keep deer from going into their property. I'd like to see a 1.8 meter tight board fence across there. That would make me a little more happy, because it would partially block it from my view. It would act as a sound barrier so that anything that's going on in there would have less intrusion on my own enjoyment of my own property. So in a nutshell, that's, you know, I'm a proponent of rejecting this completely. I've been canvassing my neighbors. I've never been to a council meeting, my fault. I've never been to a committee as a whole meeting before. I've never been to a public meeting, the public meeting that's coming. And I've never for you so far. And I've never driven a petition before. Yeah. But I have been canvassing my neighbors. Out of all the people, a lot of places people are snowbirds or they're at work, and I haven't been able to even get an opinion from them. I've had 2 households that support the idea. I have a lot, well, I haven't actually crunched the number, but I believe I've got 4 that have expressed don't care one way or the other. And then everybody else is opposed to this, as well as they are shocked. They didn't even know about it. Now, I know that there's the public notice thing, it's in the newspaper. I'm sorry, Gazette person, I haven't read it, bought a newspaper in about 15 years. But when I go to the Wooden Spoon, and there's one there, I pick it up and read it. Now, what's the likelihood of me picking up this? Pretty remote. So anyways, I'm not opposed to a new mobile home park in Grand Forks. Absolutely not. This is NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Because I'll be looking at it, I think it'll depreciate my property as well as my enjoyment of my property in the long run.
All right.
Sorry, and I don't know any of these people. I actually, talking to Neil on the week, and he says, what about GFTV? I'm sorry, I don't even know what that is. I don't do Facebook for my own reasons.
We're bad with them acronyms.
Right, and that's why
Yeah,
I pointed out earlier that, please don't use acronyms because I don't know what they are. And I'm sorry, I don't know any of these people in the back.
Your printed material is coming tonight to the public hearing.
Well, I have to talk to make sure that I'm in order. I think
You're welcome to come this evening and speak to it.
Well, I plan on coming, and so do my neighbors. So
Okay.
it should be an interesting public hearing.
Great.
Sorry for getting emotional. I'm feeling better now.
Oh, I love that because I'm like that too.
Never apologize for that.
Well, except that I look like I embarrassed myself. That's probably the biggest thing.
Okay, so thank you very much for that, Dan, and we're moving on to monthly highlight reports from our managers. Have you reviewed this, and can I place this on the table for acceptance today? Any comments, or Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I have Manager of Operations, a couple of questions for him. One is with respect to the electrical. Through you to Mr. Reed, what caused the power outage last week?
We had a bird strike up the Granby Road.
At a what? Sorry, a bird strike?
Bird, yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Flaming bird.
Okay.
A phoenix.
So that must have taken some time to locate what the issue was?
Actually, the notification came late. We only got, I think, one call on it, and then we went out and we did the line search, and we went back to the reclosers and reset everything. So.
Because I had a question from one of the downtown businesses who had phoned City Hall because they were impacted for about half an hour, he said. And do we notify our front-end staff when something like that happens so that if people are phoning in, they know what the answer is?
We normally notify them if it's a planned outage, but not an unplanned outage such as that. So once we find out what it is, it's usually a short time before we get the power back on. If it is going to be a lengthy outage, then we will try to get some sort of notification to the front counter.
Okay.
Thank you, and just one more. And this is with respect to snow clearing and sanding. So why doesn't the city stand the entire street? Why do we only drop stand at the stop signs?
So is this for downtown or rural streets?
Well, this question came from the downtown area.
Okay, so it would depend on the condition. So if it's snowing or there's significant amount of snow where we don't feel that sanding the whole laneway before it's plowed would be beneficial, I guess, then we won't. Once it's plowed, then we try to sand all of it. Residential streets, depending on conditions, if it is starting to ice up or we think we're coming into a long cold spell or something like that, we will sand the entire street, but normally we reserve that for downtown. But we do depending on the conditions downtown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further, Councillor Zelinski?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Manager of Operations again. The energizing electrical service for propane leak. Heard a comment back from the public that everything was handled great. The big glitch, I guess, was that when they were evacuating the place, you evacuated them to the rec facilities and then abruptly turned the power off there. So if you could maybe try and make plans to understand that those facilities should be kept on for various reasons.
Sorry, if I could just respond to that.
Sure.
So the initial space, I guess, was verified that we would shut off the power and then slowly turn it back on if possible for the propane leak. It was asked that we drop another section to increase the area. So we were trying to keep on the facilities, but it was a timely piece for that one. So we did get it on as fast as we could for that.
Thank you.
Future questions, Mr. Mayor? And I don't know if everybody's here that can answer. The big one that probably a lot of people are interested in is building inspection, flood damage repairs of Johnny's Motel. Anyone could speak to that?
I don't know, who would speak to it?
Mr. Bruce, I would think.
It's a private operator.
I believe Mr. Bruce might be on an appointment right now, so,
Save it till later.
pardon me?
Save my question till later.
If maybe you want to pose the question, and we can forward it off to him, so between.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Bruce, yeah.
Bruce.
Yeah. Thank you.
Close enough. Councillor Moslin.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. And building on Councillor Zelinski's thing, that propane leak incident. I guess my concern is Highway 3, that Highway 3 corridor, it goes past 2 schools and a whole densely populated area. I guess my question is do we have an emergency evacuation plan for the Highway 3 corridor?
If we as a city?
Yes. And however, what happens, as pointed out, is the regional districts facilities sometimes get caught up in it too. I've lived here for 40 years, and I haven't seen a huge need for it, but it only needs to happen once. And I know that the schools were confused. They moved along, they moved them along, they moved them along. I don't know, is there a need, or do we have an emergency evacuation plan for the Highway 3 corridor? So that's my question through you to staff.
I believe that's a no.
Well, I can speak a bit for the traffic. We do try to route traffic down 68, so depending on where the incident is, and we're looking at putting up some temporary signs that are quicker to deploy. In this instance, we had crews scattered throughout the city, so we were working with YRB and the fire department and all of outside work staff trying to coordinate where we could direct the traffic. Most of them were directed fairly soon down 68th, and we had that plowed and sanded because it was snowing that day. As for the evacuation of the schools and where they go in the houses, that's more of the fire department. I know the schools are looking at their evacuation plans and how they organize themselves. So,
I'm questioning whether or not we need that sort of a plan when our communications seem to be fairly tight on how we respond to crisis on Highway 3. Does it really require a comprehensive plan? Councillor?
I think it does. It's simply because if nothing else from the flood situation in May, people were being evacuated that didn't need to be evacuated, and all sorts of confusion. I don't think there's a formal plan in place, and I don't believe we need one.
Okay, can we move this to further discussion then? A point brought up by Councillor Moslin that we could put it on the agenda for future discussion. Agreed? Okay. Further on the monthly reports. Motion to accept the monthly reports. Councillor. And all in favor? So we're on to where we wanted to leave some time, but I see it's 11:14, but I know that there's 2 important resolutions to AKBLG next on our agenda here. Let me knock off the bottom one here because I think we're going to have to cut this one short at some point. Congratulations to the LGMA credit that our Daniel has received and is now a municipal corporate clerk. Certified. A red seal. Okay, congratulations, Daniel.
Yes.
2 years of hard work. Here, here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to open this under reports and discussions with Thompson, Councillor Thompson's resolution to AKBLG that she wanted time this morning to address.
Yes, and I had sent to council a document on the weekend because I had my original resolution that I had put together, then Councillor Krog had a recommendation for an amendment, and then I had also sent it on to Suzanne Lee for her comments. And I just wanted to discuss this with council as a whole so that we can come up with the best resolution. And I think we only can have 2 whereases if we don't have background information, and I don't have any, it's just all anecdotal. So I'm asking for comments and help to make this.
Councillor Krog.
Yes, the whereases, there's 4 of them. Preferred to be 2.
Yeah.
So if I start at the top, oh, there was my suggestion up there. Anyways, that we tighten it up.
Well,
So-
I've got no objection to,
Yeah.
that was just a proposal, and it's kind of, I want to have the right resolution that we can all support.
So I think it's important too that you have support from
Yeah.
mental health on this resolution, that you've got it targeted, right? And yeah, I think you can take those whereases out and add an and to maybe at least one of those.
And the comments from Suzanne Lee are pretty succinct there, because it says publicly funded beds, and the original was encouraged to fund more detox, and I said mandated, I think. But that sounds, her suggestion sounds the best, where it's publicly funded beds.
And that your resolution
Yeah.
basically takes those other comments into consideration already in your wording.
But I only want to have 2 whereas.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because
So bottom one has 2, that one has 2. Yeah.
I just want the best.
When does it have to be in?
March 1st.
Can we shape it online? We know that council supports it in principle here. The exact wording is something that we could iron out over the next week or so.
I'm
Game to that?
Okay, and just to say, like.
Do we need a motion on that? I'm not hearing that there's any opposition
No.
to this.
Oh, no, it's
We're
awesome.
in concert here.
We can
All right.
tighten it up.
And to the second resolution from Councillor Moslin. Do you want to lead this discussion, Councillor Moslin?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I was very unclear as to whether I should include it in my report or whether I should forward a different motion. But I did try to keep it as simple as I could, because of course, council might adopt or amend as my AKBLG. So once you put this on the floor, it isn't your motion anymore.
No.
But I did try to keep it simple. I did get some comments from the mayor and others. The intent of this motion is to join with other communities that have had similar experience with BC housing. And the intent of the motion, of course, is to basically at UBCM put BC housing in front of us and have them answer. I guess they're going to probably say, yeah, we're sorry, we'll never do it again. Or, yeah, we're sorry, we know best, suck it up. I don't know, whatever. But I really felt that we needed to have some pushback. We really do not have a lot of place for pushback. We're struggling with our own zoning bylaws. Half the time seem to defeat us. the only way we can push back is in the political forum.
Yes.
And that's what AKBLG and UBCM are political forums. So I've put this with 2 whereases to council, hope to have council support so that it can be forwarded to AKBLG. Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Zelinski and then Councillor Crop.
Yes, Mayor, just a quick clarification. You're saying only 2 whereas, is that our association meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Councillor.
I was just saying, why only 2 whereases? So I was just wondering.
Well, you can have all the whereases that you want, then you
Okay.
have to have background information to support that. And at this time, I didn't have all of the background. Well, I don't have any background, it's all anecdotal. And so,
And my only other comment, Councillor Moslin, I apologize for not looking at your motion earlier, but I'd like to tie this back to the community charter, where the community charter was created so the communities can decide how they develop as a community, and give councils the leeway to do things like this. And when it's dumped on us, that's not developing the way that we see fit.
Okay, so putting it in one of the whereases include a reference to the
And
community
you would
charter?
speak to it at the AKBLG?
Yeah, and I'll find some clauses and whatnot that we could add as background that might be
Okay.
some whereases.
Councillor Crog, thanks
Yeah.
for the input.
Oh, and then just at the bottom, it's be it resolved, so therefore be it resolved that BC Housing seek local approval before it's tendered for construction. It should be before land is purchased as well.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So a little bit.
Before the building's
wider.
built.
Yeah, before the building's built. But yeah, it just says tendered for construction, but it's the,
Before land, okay.
yeah, and if we can somehow throw in a line about working with the community as well.
So, you know, this is the golden boy for the NDP. If they can put these numbers of housings around our province, they're gonna get a lot of political points for this. So I think it needs to be strongly worded, but recognizing where this initiative is coming from. The government has said to this BC Housing, get it done.
Yeah.
so should we do the same with Councillor Moss's motion that you're doing with my proposal? Is
Certainly, fine tune it over the next
fine-tune it and
week or
bring it
so.
back to
Yeah. Councillor Corley.
This is totally not on these things, but maybe you'd explain to the gallery what AKBLG and UBCM are.
Right, I'm really trying to crack down on that in our own communications. The Association Kootenai Boundary Local Governments, AKBLG. UBCM is the Union of BC Municipalities. Is there some longer acronym now?
I hope that's fine.
No. Those are our 2 big political meetings where we can bring things at a local level and then take them to a provincial level where they would have more impact. These motions will pass on the floor and you're going to get a lot of participation from other municipalities.
Well, I just want to make sure that in my particular case, that it's the best resolution that speaks volumes. So.
Okay, well, I guess we are at the point then where we'll expect these to be shaped up and ready for the March 1st deadline of submission. Councillor Zelinski?
Just clarifications, Mayor. So is it coming back to our next council meeting for a formal approval?
Yes. You know, I guess that would be the way to show the municipality, show the citizens that we're moving this forward on a political agenda. Councillor Croft?
Yeah, can we also figure out how to tie in there that support services for these projects need to be in place before?
I think it waters it down. I think you could make it as a separate motion, but it's quite specific to, you know, the operation of an operational issue.
Yeah.
Councillor Moslin?
Or Councillor Crowe, you can always raise it as an amendment at AKBLG.
Make people discuss it.
Yeah,
Yes.
or let them bring it, or let other people add, you know, it's a nice thing.
Okay.
You gotta roll a snowball, start small.
We're telling them not to do it without getting our approval.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's certainly one of the items for discussion. All right, it's been a long morning. Last comments or anything from the floor? Nigel.
Your Worship, I looked at the website last night in order to get information for today, and I thought it looked very, very attractive. Now I see it here, it is very stark. We're missing the portrait of our head of state, and we're missing the flags of our 3 levels of government. And if you say we've got to our level of government at the provincial level, that we proudly fly your flag in our council chambers, it might make them change their attitude slightly.
I think so. Okay, we'll check in on it. Our pictures aren't in there. Les?
My own personal suggestion as far as the monthly reports and sanding of the streets and stuff, the intersection at 19th on the north side when you're waiting for the lights, that place is always iced up. Maybe your truck could visit it more often, that's all.
Yeah, it ices up where you start stopping, that's where you throw
That's right,
the sand. Anyway, Dan.
Sorry, seeing as we're talking about snow removal, I've been here 24 years, and for whatever reason, this town treats snow like it's a new phenomenon every year. Snow removal, particularly on streets like mine, which I fully understand, which are not major thoroughfares, and I don't expect them to be plowed every time an inch of snow comes down. However, my road is 16th Street has only been plowed 3 times this year. And I'm sorry, they were a terrible job on each. And subsequent to that, the weather would warm up, this would become slush, and then ruts get put into it, and then we get weather like we have now, and now it's locked in like concrete until it thaws again. I don't see, the only thing I see, and I'm not versed on this, again, I've tried to stay out of this, but it seems it's being brought up. I'm not sure if there's, perhaps, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are, but perhaps you can tell me, is there somebody that works either a graveyard shift? Because I know from my own experience in the last 24 years, if it snows on a Friday night, other than possibly main thoroughfares like 77, from Highway 3 to on Boundary Drive to 77th, and then up to McCallum Drive and stuff up in Belmar area, 68th Avenue, the major thoroughfares, but no other road sees any snow removal for possibly 3-4 days, particularly to throw a stat holiday in.
In fact, feedback is our friend, and you're really getting into this political stuff.
No, I'm not going to be running for office.
Okay, Nigel, last comment.
On the subject of snow, I wasn't going to bring it up. However, now that I am on my Shanks's pony and can no longer drive, cars it's very easy for cars. There's a wheel at each corner and it's stable. Oh, I beg your pardon. And it's stable. And with the centre of gravity probably about thigh high. Now, when you get on your feet and you might slide around, I put my tungsten carbide tips on and I took them off not to damage the entrance hall, etc., the wood on entrance to the building. But the center of gravity of people is around about this height, just about the belly button. And only 2 feet means you become unstable. And when you become unstable, you could easily fall and you could easily be damaged. And I only hope that the city has got very good insurance for when I fall over and when I have become incapacitated, because I do not wish to live in a wheelchair for the rest of my life.
Thank you, Nigel, and good of you to recognize the fear we all have of falling at our age. Anyway, thank you all very much. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson. Thanks. I think we got a good discussion happening today. Because we're quick on our feet.
And I'd like to just thank everybody here. I didn't know protocol, but I thank you for recognizing me and allowing me to speak.
You're welcome. Yeah, we appreciate the input. Thank you. Okay.